Our youngest of three, our daughter, has dyslexia. We didn't know that, of course. We suspected there was something not quite right. First grade, when she was really struggling to learn to read. And by second grade, when she was failing more than half of her subjects in school, we knew there was a problem and it was time to really figure it out.
It's one thing if you have a child who's struggling in school. That's difficult enough. It's a whole other thing is when your child's struggling at the school that you started. We had started a private K through 12 school. It was K through 8 at the time and still is, and eventually be K through 12. But we'd started this school primarily, obviously, for the education of our children, but also for the community at large. And so for her to be struggling so mightily within the educational environment in which we created was that much more challenging and difficult for us personally.
We had some friends who knew of the Morris Center, and so I just called to get information. Through neuroscience, the brain can be rewired and she can live a full functioning life full of books and reading and delight in learning, and that's what I needed to hear, and that was our experience.
Yeah, it just wasn't a promise of we can give her skills to cope, but that we can really help her gain skills and abilities that will help her not just cope, but to succeed and to excel.
She literally had more language with which to communicate, and she was had another year of maturity. And one night she shared with me, as she was reading to me, that when she was in school before the Morris Center, her stomach would drop and do flip-flops when the teacher called her name to read, because she knew she wouldn't do well. And she said now she likes to read. And in fact, this past year, I think the biggest complaint she had for the first several weeks of school is that she didn't get to read enough out loud in a full class of 16 students.
The teacher wasn't fair because he didn't call on her enough to read. The hard part as parents beforehand is the school itself is very literature based, lots of reading, lots of source material. It's a kind of back to a more classical kind of approach to education. So her struggles were magnified in that a lot of the curriculum had a lot of reading in it. And so the pain that as parents to think how much she suffered, and of our three kids, she's the one that holds it all inside and then acts happy anyway. I think with the other two, we would have known, they would have verbalized something a lot sooner. She just buried it all inside and still just enjoyed life when she was away from school.
Working with an 8-year-old, it's hard to help her stay focused on where we're headed, given how hard she was working, but she definitely sees it now. And you can tell she's just a freer, confident, young little girl who she thinks her dyslexia is just something that used to be true, maybe, that really doesn't hold her back in any way.
And yeah, maybe it wasn't instant, but it was pretty quick. For her to go to a place where she was, what grade was she in at the time? Second grade, and reading at maybe a pre-K level, at K level at best, to reading at grade level in 3 to 4 months, to me, is quick.
Yeah, and obviously I think that the intensity that is part of the program at the Morris Center is, that's the magic, if you will, because 1 hour a week isn't going to rewire the brain. But dyslexia certainly,
life-altering.
It's life-altering. It affects your quality of life for sure. And it's just hopeful that you can overcome, there's a cure, basically. That it's not just here's medication and we'll walk you through it, but there's a real cure. That's exciting. It's hopeful.